And we are back. We got a 7-game slate to talk about here on Saturday. Welcome, guys. My name is DK. Like I said, we'll be breaking down the 7-game NBA DFS slate. I also cover content for NFL daily fantasy sports, as well as for player prop sites like PrizePicks, Underdog, and Parlay Play. If you guys are looking for more content, DFS, or for player prop stuff, you can check my Patreon link down below. We had a very, very, very good month. And yeah, so let's recap tonight. So tonight was, well, let's first go over some prop stuff. I went 4-1 an underdog, and look at this. Look at the one miss. Jalen Williams, 4 of 14 shooting, and another hook. Start the ladder challenge. Jalen Williams also in it. Scotty Barnes soars over, even with foul trouble. Again, Jalen Williams, hook. Went 4-2 on PrizePicks, 4-1 on Underdog. The only miss was Jalen Williams in both sites on Underdog and PrizePicks, and then I had Desmond Bane, who don't even get me started there, man. Massive foul trouble and literally 5% shooting. I over-exaggerate a lot when I'm tilted. I'm not over-exaggerating. 5% shooting for Desmond Bane. I don't know how many more hooks I can take, man. I don't know. Like, I've been hooked out of 25x 3 times already this week. Just got hooked out of a 10x on Underdog. We got hooked in the ladder challenge. If you guys are ever curious, too, about making content for gambling social media, go read some of the comments, man. I had so many people hating because Jalen Williams missed by 0.5. It's just, like, insane, man. Like, no matter what you do, you're always going to get hate on, gambling social media. It's wild. You have to be very, very level-headed. And then for DFS, Desmond Bane sunk my lineup. I hit on so many good low-owned. So there was a lot of stands I liked in tournaments. I was all over Tyler Hero, 1% owned, 50 bomb. I was all over Scotty Barnes. No one wanted him once again. 55 fantasy points for Scotty Barnes. I loved Ben Simmons for tournaments. He had like a triple-double at low ownership. I said, if Day'Ron Sharpe does not start, you should pivot off him. He was like 60% owned and played like 3 minutes. So I feel like I hit on a lot of stuff. Also said, told everyone to play at least 2 Cavs in every lineup. Basically all like the Cavs smashed. So I feel like I should have had a huge night. But again, I had Desmond Bane in my lineup. So that DFS is tough, man. If you have one miss in tournaments, you're basically done. And that's what happened tonight. So I feel like I had a very good read for the slate. Nailed like almost all my low-owned plays. The only low-owned play that did not hit was Desmond Bane, who again ran a massive foul trouble and 5% shooting. So once again, just adding to the proof that no one runs worse, right? We've showed you guys the prop stuff over the last week. The Bane thing tonight, incredible stuff, incredible. Also apologize for not getting a video up yesterday, just kind of a time thing, ran short on time. All right, so let's get into this slate. Before we do, though, let's go over the odds, totals for each of these games. So we got Memphis and Washington right now. The average odds is about 225.5. Chicago and Detroit about a 219 over under. Knicks and Pelicans 225.5. Pacers and Cavs 223.5. 76ers and Raptors about 218. Heat and Timberwolves about 219, and Jazz Suns right now is the highest, or projected to be the highest scoring game, 230.5. And what you guys are looking at is the odds jam sportsbook screen, where it shows, if you wanted to bet on the game, it would give you the average odds, and if you wanted to bet on it, it would give you the sportsbook that offers the best odds. Obviously, not a ton of books have stuff up right now because it's the day before, but if you guys are interested, you can use the code DKDFS for 25% off your first month, or you can use the link down below. They do have a fantasy optimizer or sites like PrizePicks, Underdog, Parlay Play. If you guys are curious as well, I have a video talking about that, tips and how to use it. So you can go check that out on YouTube. But a lot of different tools here. They have positive EV stuff, like I said, the sportsbook screen. So if you guys are interested in signing up for OddsJam, again, check out the link down below or use the code DKDFS. 25% off your first month. All right, so let's get into the breakdown. We'll start off with Memphis and Washington. So you already know he's going to smash, right, tomorrow. But yeah, Bane at 8.5, Triple J at 7.8. I think both are really good options. I think Bane is a little bit safer. I know it's weird to say after what he did to me tonight, but Jaren Jackson is very foul prone. I think he had 5 fouls again tonight. But I like the ceiling on both. If Triple J stays out of foul trouble, we know he has a massive ceiling. And again, you look at the rest of this roster, it's like, where is offense coming from? It's Bane and it's Triple J, right? So I think both of the main Memphis guys look really good in a great matchup here. I also like Marcus Smart. I mean, he should play low to mid 30s minutes, and he's at a sub 6K price point. He should be the number 3 in offense. So I'm pretty high in the top 3 guys here for Memphis. I think Xavier Tillman's a pretty solid option. I think he should play around 30 minutes. I think he's a good, good value. Aldama has missed the last couple games. Also, Luke Kennard missed the game. Let's see. So it looks like it won't be long-term concussion. We'll see if he's available. With Kennard out, you saw John Conchar enter the rotation. Zaire Williams is 3.9. I mean, he's the other starter. He's not going to be a super high usage player, but I think he is a pretty solid value. And then off the bench, if there's no Kennard, you should see Conchar. You should see Roddy, Rose, and LaRavia. I think Roddy and Rose are both interesting punt plays. So I am pretty high in Memphis tomorrow in a great matchup. Let's talk about Washington. So Washington, I mean, starters barely played the fourth quarter. That's going to happen a fair amount here with this Wizards team. They're not good, but obviously that did tilt me because I had a low on Poole the other night. Poole and Kuzma, this is where the offense is run. These are the 2 high usage players. And if the game stays competitive, it's going to be because of these 2 guys. So I like the ceiling on both. The minutes obviously weren't great last game, but they barely played the fourth quarter. And then Tyus Jones, I think, is a little bit safer. I think his ceiling is not as high, but he can do a little bit more of the peripheral stats, and is a bit cheaper. So I think he's probably the safest option of the top 3 guys, but I do like the ceiling more on Poole and on Kuzma. Denny and Gafford were the other starters. Denny at 5.3K. I'm expecting mid to high 20s minutes. Kind of indifferent on him. And same with Gafford at 5.1. He is somewhat foul prone. He had 5 fouls last game, but he is a guy, if he stays out of foul trouble, usually a pretty good point per minute player. DeLon Wright played the backup point, had a bit of an outlier game last game. Again, was the blowout, so I'm not going to read too much into that. Koulibaly will get decent minutes on the bench. Kispert, Gallinari, Muscala will kind of round out the rotation there. All right, New York and New Orleans. So for the Knicks, Randall at 8.2 and Brunson at 7.6. I think are both pretty good options. Both had solid games, especially Brunson went for 30 real-life points tonight. So, yeah, I think the 2 main Knicks guys look pretty good. And RJ Barrett, he should play a ton. He has a bit of a lower floor than those other 2 guys. And he's playing a lot of minutes right now the first 2 games. Quickly off the bench, I think is still playable. He should play mid-20s minutes and is a viable tournament option. Mitchell Robinson, I want to say he played 38 minutes tonight. The only issue with him is he is pretty foul prone. But if he stays out of foul trouble, if you give him 38 minutes again, yeah, sign me up for a 5K Mitch Robinson. Other options, Grimes, I think Josh Hart's reasonable at 4.9. You'll see Hardenstein play the backup 5, and then DiVincenzo is an okay punt play as well at 3.7. Let's talk about the Pelicans. So the Pelicans, you're going to get the starting lineup once again of Zion, Ingram, CJ, JV, and Herbert Jones. And they're pretty thin off the bench, right? No Trey Murphy, no Najee Marshall, no Alvarado. So a lot of the usage is going to come here from the starters. Zion, Ingram, and CJ, I think are all firmly in play. Zion played 32 minutes, kind of had a subpar game. It was CJ that had the big game last game, went for 46 fancy points, and then Ingram also played a fair amount, 36 minutes. So I don't have any really super strong takes on the top 3 guys for the Pelicans, but I think they're all firmly in play. I will say I think JV is a bit underpriced for a guy that should play, high 20s minutes. Played 29 minutes last game. He's well north of a fantasy point per minute player. So I do like the ceiling here on Jonas Valanciunas. The issue is, again, there's a lot of good mid-range centers once again on the slate. Herb Jones is the other starter. I mean, he played a ton, 38 minutes. I think he's a pretty safe value play. Like I said, this team, they don't have a lot of depth right now, so I'm expecting big minutes from the main guys. Larry Nance, he'll play the backup 5, 4.4K. I would just rather go to JV for a little bit more. The rest of the bench rotation was Dyson Daniels, Matt Ryan, Hawkins, and Kira Lewis. So like I said, they're pretty thin right now, the Pelicans, outside of the starters. Talk about Chicago. So Chicago, they won in overtime tonight. Zach LaVine has been really bad the first couple games, and he got a little bit banged up. I think, what was the exact quote? Underdog, I just saw that before I went on to make this video. Where's Underdog? Pull it up. So Zach LaVine dealing with a back issue, status TBD. So that's big news to keep an eye on. If Zach LaVine does not play, well, number one, DeRozan and Vucevic are going to become 2 of the best plays of the slate because they already are playing big minutes, and we know where the usage comes from Chicago. And if there's no LaVine, Those two are clearly mispriced here in a good spot against Detroit. So really like Vooch and DeRozan if there is no Levine. And then also, you're going to get more minutes and usage for some of these value plays. I think Kobe White would look really good. Caruso, my guess is he would move into the starting lineup. They could also start Io, though. He would play more. So a lot of these guards would look a lot better. Io, Caruso, Kobe White. Pat Williams, I think, would be reasonable, but he would rank behind those guards for me. And then last guy to mention here is Drummond. He'll play the backup 5. It is a revenge game narrative if you're into that. He is a really good point per minute guy, but don't see him playing a ton unless something happens to Vooch. And if Levine plays, then I will say Levine would probably be my favorite tournament play of the big three, just because, number one, he's dealing with that back issue. Number two, he's really struggled the first couple games. I think the ownership will be really low on him if he does play. So I would be interested in Levine if he does play in tournaments. So I think the ownership will be really, really low. Talk about Detroit. So Detroit, Cade Cunningham had a huge game 1, had a really bad game 2. He did get in foul trouble. And Cade Cunningham is very foul prone. Right? We talked about that with Scoot tonight, and sure enough, Scoot picked up 3 quick fouls. So he had 5 fouls here. He fouled out in like 24 minutes tonight. That is the issue with Cade, but the ceiling clearly is there. I think Jalen Duren and Stuart Thompson are probably the best point per dollar plays here for the Pistons. Stuart Thompson, I'm expecting high 20s minutes from. He's a stat sheet stuffer. And Jalen Duren, I want to say, how many minutes did he play? It's not updated yet. I want to think like 30, mid-30s minutes. Jalen Duren has looked pretty good so far the first 2 games. You know, he played 35 minutes, Jalen Duren. 14 points, 17 boards, 1 steal, 2 blocks. Like, yeah, I think Jalen Duren looks really good. The only thing I will say is I do think he'll be a bit over-owned at the first 2 games of the season, but it's hard to argue what he's done so far to start. The rest of the Pistons, I think Stewart's an okay like pivot off chalk. I assume Jalen Duren will be pretty chalky tomorrow. The other guards, I mean, you got Ivy, you got Keelan Hayes, you got Alec Burks. They're all playable options. I think factoring in salary, Burks would probably be the easiest guy to get to. Bagley will play the backup 5. And then that's probably it for the Pistons. Let's talk about Philadelphia. Philadelphia, no Harden once again. You got Joel Embiid at 10-7. I mean, I like his ceiling. Obviously, without James Harden, he is the go-to guy offensively. Maxey was phenomenal last game. Again, I played him. And he got in a bit of foul trouble, started really slow, but picked it up in a big way. In 40 minutes, went for 53 fancy points. Still think he's playable at this price point. Tobias Harris feels priced about right. Melton was the other starter, but he didn't play a ton last game, only 25 minutes. I could see him playing a bit more. It was Kelly Oubre that played really well off the bench. I mentioned him on the Patreon stream, how I liked him at 1% ownership the other day. And yeah, he went for 35 fantasy points. It's just Oubre's going to run that second unit, and he's going to chuck when he's out on the court. Don't really know if I get to anyone else here. Like, I don't think it's necessary to get to like PJ Tucker or Paul Reed or Pat Bev. I would say it's mainly the top guys, right? It's Speed, it's Maxey, it's Harris, it's Melton, and then it's Oubre off the bench. All right, let's talk about Toronto. So when, and I mean when, will the Scotty Barnes faders learn, right? It's the preseason grinders. We have an edge early in the NBA regular season. Because Scotty Barnes is a completely different role, and projection sites across the industry are not accounting for that. I've been all over Scotty Barnes the first two slates of the season, and he's absolutely smashed at no ownership. So I don't think he's going to be that low owned tomorrow because of back-to-back huge games. But again, he has a different role this year. He's like their main go-to guy with Van Fleet with Van Fleet no longer there. So I am still high on Scotty Barnes, even at 7-4. I think Siakam's fine. I would rather play Barnes at that discount. We also have to keep an eye on OG. He didn't return with a muscle cramp. So we'll see if it's kind of weird that he wasn't able to return with a cramp. If he's not able to go, I would assume they start Gary Trent Jr. So if there's no OG, I think Gary Trent Jr. would be a solid option. Schroeder at 5-5, I think is pretty safe. I mean, I'm expecting around 30 minutes from him. Hurdle got in massive foul trouble. He didn't play a ton. And then Precious Achiuwa also got in massive foul trouble. Right now, they're kind of splitting the center position, though, so neither really stand out. Plus, they're going up against Embiid, which is not the best spot. My boy Boucher did get dusted off this game, and he played well in limited minutes. I think he's interesting for tournaments, just as how good of a point-per-minute guy that he is. Indiana and Cleveland. So Halliburton is the one guy in the injury report. He's questionable. There's optimism he will be able to play, though. Now, the minutes weren't great on him, but again, that game was a blowout. I think you should expect low 30s minutes from Halliburton on average. So, like his ceiling, Miles Turner got in some foul trouble last game. Another guy that is pretty foul prone. If he stays out of foul trouble, we know the ceiling is there. I don't really have any super strong takes in these mid-range guys for the Pacers. They all look pretty similar, like Hield and Mathurin and Brown and Toppin, Nemhard. Like, I don't know. They're all kind of just like there for me. Jalen Smith, he'll play the backup center position. He also dealt with a bit of foul trouble, but he is a good point per minute guy. So, yeah. I mean, if you want to land on one of these mid-range guys, I'm not going to talk you off them. I just think none of them really stand out to me. All right, Cleveland. So Cleveland's a team that I don't think we're going to see Garland and Jared Allen once again. We'll obviously keep an eye on the news. But if they're both out, I mean, I'm fine just loading up in the Cavs once again. I think Donovan Mitchell would be one of the better spend-ups in the slate. I want to say he played over 40 minutes tonight. Evan Mobley, this team is really thin. He had a good game. I would be pretty high on him. Strus, I want to say, was the one starter that did not play the best. I think he had a really bad shooting game, if I recall. Let me bring it up. So Strus shot 3 of 14. He still played 38 minutes, though. 8 points, 5 boards, 4 assists. So you had 42 minutes for Mitchell, 38 for Strus, 28 minutes for Okoro, 34 for Mobley, 27 for Dean Wade, and then 31 minutes for LeVert off the bench. Those 6 guys played a majority of the game. Jerome played 9 minutes, Damian Jones played 10, and Niang played 21 off the bench. So if Garland and Allen are out once again, I mean, all those main 6 guys, Mitchell, Mobley, Strus, LeVert, Okoro, I think all look really, really good here. So, yeah, I'm very high in Cleveland. I'll be very high in Cleveland once again if there's no Garland and Allen, just because, again, they're running a tight rotation, and a lot of these guys are just underpriced for the roles. Like 4.1K for Okoro, 5.1 for LeVert, 5.3 for Strus. They're all too cheap. Mobley, Mitchell. I mean, you can make the argument for Dean Wade. Min price, played high 20s minutes. He's not the best point per minute guy, but yeah, I mean, I'm fine if you want to play a little bit of Dean Wade. Miami and Minnesota. So Miami, Martin and Richardson both missed last game. We'll keep an eye on their status. Again, one of my strong takes on the Patreon stream was I really liked Hero for tournaments. I played him 1%. He went for 50 bomb, but again, it didn't matter because I had Bane. But yeah, I mean, it's just this Miami team is different than last year. We talked about, like, they don't have as much depth anymore. No more Gabe Vincent, no more Strus. They're like Martin and Richardson are out. Like, this team, they just don't have a lot of guys. So I, once again, really like Tyler Hero at 6'7". I think Bam Adebayo is a really solid play. And I think Jimmy Butler is fine if you want to pay up for him. It's just, again, this team is shorthanded. They don't have a lot of depth. So I like the main guys, but I think Hero and Bam would be my favorite options. And even Dusty Kyle Lowry. He's playing like 30 minutes a game right now. I think he's a pretty good play. Kevin Love, if he sees 20-plus minutes, he's a solid value. Little revenge game narrative against his former team. I mean, off the bench, assuming Martin and Richardson are out, if I had to play someone, it probably would be Duncan Robinson, 3.8K. Should see 20-plus minutes. The only issue with him is he is scoring dependent. All right, Minnesota. So McDaniels is once again doubtful. I expect them to start NAW. And then you should get more run for a guy like Slow-Mo off the bench. Anthony Edwards, 9.3. Cat, 8.4. Bull should play mid-30s minutes. You saw 38 minutes for Anthony Edwards last game, which is a lot. Karl-Anthony Towns saw 36 minutes. I think both are solid spend-ups. Gobert should see low 30s minutes. Kind of just indifferent on him. He did have a good game, though. You know, when he has one of those games where he has like 4 or 5 blocks, he obviously has a ceiling. We saw that last game. 45 fantasy points, 4 blocks, and 2 steals. Conley, just kind of there for me. Slow-Mo, I think, is interesting, though. He's a stat sheet stuffer, and I like the price point for him. I don't care if he starts or not. Again, he's going to play big minutes off the bench. So I think he's a pretty interesting player in the mid-range. I don't think he'll be super popular. My boy NAW did not have the best game in the starting lineup, but it's still cheap if he starts again. I think he's a pretty safe value. My boy Naz Reid, he played 24 minutes. We know he's a good point per minute guy. If you give him 24 minutes again, I would expect a lot more than 16 fantasy points. So Naz Reid, I think, is an interesting tournament play. Shake Milton will kind of run the second unit. He played 21 minutes. I think he's even viable. So, yeah, fair amount to like here. A lot of the value plays I think look pretty interesting for the Timberwolves. And finally, Utah and Phoenix. Utah, Lauri Markkanen at 8.9K. High total game. He should play mid-30s minutes. I like the ceiling quite a bit on Lauri Markkanen. And then if I had to pick like a secondary guy here for the Jazz, it would be Jordan Clarkson. Reasonable price point he's starting. I'm expecting low 30s minutes from him. So like his upside. The rest of the Jazz are kind of just like their filler plays for me. Kessler, John Collins, reasonable. THT's okay, but again, he's not playing a ton of minutes. You're seeing Olynyk back up Kessler. You're seeing Dunn, Sexton, Keontae George, Ochai Agbaji all in the rotation. I don't know. Again, none of these like value plays really stand out for me for the Jazz. And finally, the Suns. No Beal, and Booker is once again doubtful, so not expecting him to play. Yeah, I mean, Kevin Durant, the price went up on him, but I think it's still too low. Without Beal and without Booker, I mean, they are going to lean on Kevin Durant heavy. So, yeah, he's one of the best spin-ups in the slate once again. My boy Nurkic started the game off super strong and then got in a mess of foul trouble that really tilted me. But if he stays out of foul trouble, I'm expecting around 30 minutes from Yusuf Nurkic. So I like his ceiling a good amount. And there's a lot to like here for value for the Suns, too. Without Booker and without Beal, I mean, there's just a ton of minutes and you should stick around. So Okogie, Gordon, Allen, Goodwin all look really, really good. Okogie at 5K, I think feels, is probably my least favorite of that group, but still viable. Eric Gordon started off strong and then just completely disappeared. But I do like his ceiling. We'll see what the ownership comes in on him. Grayson Allen had a decent game in 35 minutes. And then Jordan Goodwin played well off the bench in 30 minutes just because, again, they're shorthanded at the guard position. So I like a lot of the Suns' value once again. Okogie, Gordon, Allen, and Goodwin. All right, guys, so that's going to do it for the video. Keep an eye out. I'll try to get a video up after this talking about some player props I like for tomorrow. Other than that, again, if you do enjoy, make sure to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. I'll try to aim for 100 likes on this video, and we'll see you all in the next one.